shit, they took Alpha!
Agitating agility. Fast, nearly to the point of fiction. An unbelievable weapon, leaving you and the enemy alike asking the same age-old question. How do you fit 50 rounds in such a small package? Hi. If you asked me half a year ago, I frankly didn't think this one would ever see release to Insurgency Sandstorm, especially to Insurgents, but regardless of expectations, both the performance and the mere sight of this weapon inspires true nostalgia in myself, given that it was pretty much the coolest gun I ever used in any game growing up and the best Ahoy video. Taking a look today at the Belgian SMG made decades ago, but designed for the Russians of tomorrow.
Everyone buy P90 and Rush B.
Okay.
I was
Are you guys ready?
Oh no!
I'm Six Snipes with a P90, and you're watching Gun Guide. The F in her style, Project 90, or else simply known as the P90, is, like virtually every other submachine gun today, a product of the MP5. The age-old German design was, well, aging in a 1980s world defined by terrorism on the home front instead of enemy nations on the battlefield. This was no longer acceptable. The dated caliber of the 9mm, then lacking in innovation, could neither fare well enough against modern armor to make a mark, nor lose enough energy to avoid penetrating surfaces and potentially wounding civilians amidst urban conflicts. A new generation of caliber, and a weapon to accompany it, was in order, and Belgian weaponsmith company Fabrique Nationale Herstal could go on to create quite arguably the ultimate solution for the $1 million weapons contract. I ask you to picture a weapon with a magazine that's top-mounted, but runs parallel to the barrel and nearly the length of the entire gun, with the bullets on their side, perpendicular to the bore, bullpup in design and primarily comprised of polymer. And you'd call me a fucking idiot, but that's literally what the P90 is, and say it looks dumb, say it could be clunky, but performance-wise, it would change the scene and benchmark the performance towards a new wave of weapons, more than submachine guns, personal defense weapons, or PDWs. And while it was Belgium's design, this weapon would go down in our hearts and minds to be the most Russian gun ever. That plus a 50-round capacity and the fire rate you'd expect from a gun with a bolt travel distance shorter than the attention span of the developers to the fans. And you probably start to see why it would be difficult to have an accurate interpretation of this weapon in Insurgency Sandstorm, much less any game. And yet, it kind of works. I made this series preemptively feature breacher picks because logically these are breacher guns, but the exotic nature of the weapon combined with the chance to really diversify the portfolio of the advisor class, which otherwise lacks identity, sort of checks all the boxes I could ask for aside from just having the gun alone. And I'm not particularly broken up about it being for terrorists, as it's not exactly the newest thing ever and has seen rigorous circulation, meaning it could easily end up in the hands of a foreign aid, which checks out. This piece of shit on the other hand, furthermore, the gun features not one but two unique sights which are there. They're not good, but they were the original hardware that came integrated into the model, kind of. They are the most inaccurate representations with this firearm because they are not holographic. In real life, the T-scope was originally red and later green, but always appear to be a simple black crosshair in daylight, but illuminated in low light environments because of tritium or other elements. They were also never blue. The other odd part about this weapon is, just like every other game, you get this top rail mounted iron sight, which is not only not tritium illuminated, please add glow sights, but also just isn't the iron sights on the actual piece. Anyone who's held one of these I actually have knows that the iron sights are here with the rear post and the front up here on either side, ambidextrous like the rest of the weapon. They can still be used regardless of optic mounting too, which would be sort of a neat feature to have. They did get right the fact that the ejection port is on the bottom, meaning casings fly straight down, something which is missed in nearly every other game, as well as the fact that the magazines are clear polymer and most usefully negate the need for mag checks given the fact that you can see straight through them, a very welcome mechanic previously exclusive to the G36. But you don't give a shit about realism. How does the gun play? Well, first of all, this thing is nowhere near as potent as it sounds on paper. I would contend that most of this has to do with a subpar default performance. You're paying 5 credits for 50 rounds and the ability to send them fast and hard. Nothing says that means you'll hit anything. I've always maintained the opinion that nothing past around 700 rounds per minute counts as an advantage, as it's well over the rate of fire necessary to have a reasonable time to kill with any caliber and only serves to overshoot or make missed bursts more costly and ultimately defeating. At 857 rounds per minute, those 50 rounds can easily disappear if you haven't adjusted to the very unpredictable recoil patterns or else foolishly attempted to get any results with penetration. You won't. In real life, many of its ammunition variants are engineered to disintegrate upon contact with drywall on other surfaces commonly used in households, and this holds true. Anything aside from flimsy sheet metal is more or less a no-go, and you will lose any battle of bullet physics every time. This doesn't, however, explain why the recoil is so sporadic. A lot of horizontal movement typical of SMGs, but very sudden and unpredictable, making precise sustained fire past very close quarters difficult without utilizing some sort of recoil control attachment, on top of the 5 credits you have once again paid already, making this not like the MP7 where a high price tag gets a good gun, but more attachments make it usable. That's not to say that the base model itself is underwhelming at all, but anything between a costly foregrip to a simple red dot is going to improve this thing's ability to both acquire and accurately hit targets vastly. I actually find once you get used to it, an ACOG brings me back to the days of Siege, where this is basically a 50-round pocket machine gun with a sniper scope and the ability to aggressively tap fire snipers and campers into submission. This will also subsequently combo very well with the dual optics available. Unfortunately, it is worth noting mounting any grip whatsoever results in the extension of the barrel length to fit some of the pieces on an ugly-ass quad rail, which is not going to help your close quarters profile and doesn't seem to increase velocity whatsoever despite literally having a longer barrel. However, properly kitted out, I think this weapon really does show some potential, especially in the context of a very efficient and long-lived defensive hold. So with the number of bullets per mag and the ability to properly control them, you really can just get guy after guy after guy without needing a new magazine, which notably actually reloads decently quickly and leaves nothing left to be desired. Most optics do just look comically top-heavy.
Look at this dude. Wait till you see the. No, 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 no. Look at the top of his head.
So the logical conclusion was to use the Mars plus magnifier option, which is just the best solution to that. So with only 2 times magnification, sure, managing the recoil is difficult, but from a prone position where it's far less, you really can make some excellent cross-map bursts with some practice and with bullets that actually hit hard enough to turn their heads into mist. The new caliber itself, among all of these things, is certainly the point of interest to me. Developing new per-shot damage models is generally more rare than actual weapons in this game, and honestly, it does the damage I'd expect at the ranges that make sense. Overall, it's a very ambitious weapon which accomplishes most of the things I'd want to see from a gun that's just one of my favorites. My personal build is the MRO with suppressor and tracers for optimal close quarters engagements where the low noise just ends up to confuse hostiles and allows the rigorous punishment of people pushing my sight, and even if it's not the greatest at a certain range, at least it's still silent enough to make finding the shooter a chore. Refined, classy, and unexpectedly adverse at tackling a lot of problems without any reloading. Anyway, that's all I have to say about the P90. It's very entertaining to use so far, but no more interesting than the topic of the next video in the series. An equally entertaining concept mechanically, but a much younger design. But until then, as always, I'm Six Snipes, this has been the glorious P90, and you've been watching Gun Guide. I'll see you out there in Sandstorm.
Okay.